Welcome back to Asian Wonder Woman podcast. I'm Ivy.
I'm Emily.
And we are here today to talk about when to quit our corporate or your corporate job, when to quit your corporate job, how to quit your corporate job, and how we quit our corporate jobs. Today, we're going to talk about, our stories of when and why we quit, what we did after, how we felt about the whole process, maybe how we feel now, and some advice that we would give someone who wants to quit, or advice that we would give ourselves if we were to speak to. For me, it was 25-year-old me, and Emily just quit her job this year, 2022.
Last year.
So more recently, 28-year-old self. I'll kick it off. So Emily and I both worked in Silicon Valley way back in our early 20s. And so after I turned 25, I reminded myself that the whole reason that I moved to Silicon Valley was so that I can be an entrepreneur. I wanted to get the training from some of the best in the world. I wanted to build a tech company. I wanted to be like the next Zuckerberg, Evan Spielberg kind of thing, right? Like that was my goal. And at 25, I was like, I'm not heading in that direction anymore. Everything that I was doing was going up that corporate ladder. I realized that all the opportunities ahead of me were pretty much looking the same. And I remember writing an article back in the day that actually went pretty viral on Medium as well. I was going fairly viral on Medium around job hunting and like reflections around careers at that time. And I wrote an article about why I was leaving San Francisco. And it was about how when I first started my career, I had these certain opportunities. I could go into product management, I can go to business development, I can go into like sales, I can go into marketing, etc. And I pretty much just took whatever job, was offered to me because it was really hard to get that first job. But looking back at that 3 years later, I realized no matter which job I got, I was going to pretty much be in the same position as I was that day, which was I was a first-time manager now after 3 years of my career. I made like slightly over 100K and I had offers at Meta, or back then still Facebook, Google, and I had connections everywhere, and just seemed like my decisions almost didn't matter in Silicon Valley. Like what I chose to do next, I looked at the options ahead of me then and thought in 3 years, no matter which one I pick, will my opportunities look that different? Will my life look that different? And it ended up being no. Like no matter whether I joined Meta as a business development or account manager on their Instagram shopping team, which I had an offer at, or I joined an early stage startup as like an early growth manager, I feel like in 3 years, even if the startup failed or succeeded, the opportunities that lay out in front of me were going to be the same. And I just wanted almost like more control over my own life. And I wanted more possibilities for myself. So that's why I quit. And maybe, Emily, you didn't know that before, but would love to hear your more recent story.
Yeah. Going back to your point about like quitting, I think I connected with you on that point when we were talking about like having control. So I think having control of like our hours, like what our schedule looked like who we get to work with and like where we get to be. I think those are all like points that you and I definitely can agree on. And similarly, like in my own career, I've been in a lot of interesting careers and places, but I all left them because of that like need to be in control of my schedule. So like I was at Booking for a while, opening up properties, like making sales calls to get properties to open on the platform. I hated it, so I left. Went to Google as a contractor, realized that the entire contract team was just doing the same thing every day, and that was like super monotonous. I left that to work at a startup. Was at the startup, was pretty happy there for like 2 to 3 years, got really burnt out and just decided to leave as well and went to Asia. And then again, picked up 2 other jobs, like working in tech media and then at Stripe most recently. So anyways, like I think the long story short was like there's a pattern of like me getting great opportunities to work at like pretty prestigious companies and enjoying my time there, but just realizing like I kept getting burnt out and I kept being unhappy because I was like my time was controlled by like a manager, or like I couldn't work on the things that I wanted to work on. So now I do my own hours.
Did you recognize that already in your first job? Like did every job give you more control over your time?
In every job that I continued to like join, it made me happier because one, I was getting paid more. So job hopping in Silicon Valley, like your salary just increases. So I was like, okay, great money. So that's what kept me in like some certain roles longer than others. So it was like the money. And then
money gives you more control over your life as well. So it's good. Yeah,
exactly. Right. And then I think the second was just like finding the people that I actually wanted to work with. So that's why I was at that startup for like almost 3 years, because I really enjoyed working with them. Did you find that as well.
I didn't have nearly as many jobs as you did. Like what you just listed, you're like, oh yeah, I was here, then I quit, and then I was here, then I quit, and I was here, and I quit. I went to Asia and I quit, and then I got this job and I quit again. Like I didn't have that, right? Like I didn't have that blessing where my first two jobs I was laid off from. So I was just trying to like
Mm.
hold down a job, okay, in
Yeah.
the time that you were quitting like your first two jobs. My third job offer that I got, I stuck out for like 2 years, and that's the one I quit. And I haven't really gone back since in like working a more traditional corporate, whether it be at a startup or not, kind of role. And if your question is more on like, do I feel like I've been getting more of maybe what I want as I
Mhm.
hop, right? Financially, yes, as well. But I think the main question here is like, what drives your career decisions? And that is a very good question. And I didn't expect to talk about that. Like, what drives my career decisions? Like it would be a lie to be like money is not part of that decision, because I think money
Yeah.
can definitely give you so much more freedom to choose where you want to live, what you want to do in your spare time, to save time by spending more money on certain things. And that's like kind of all outside of work. Of
Mhm.
course, we look for more ownership and we look for more responsibility, more impact, etc. In fact, from like a hiring managing perspective, I know that like everyone's only motivated by money up to a certain extent. Unless you're paying wildly above market rate, like no one's going to choose that just because of that. Like it's about the people, like you mentioned, and what you're doing every day, who you're impacting, how much responsibility you get. That's all part of like me selling other people to work for me today. And that's like what I care about. And I think what has driven me is definitely more freedom. I think freedom's like that strongest value of being able to work where I want, do what I want, but mostly like I want to work to support the lifestyle that I want. And that's what freedom means to me. And that's what our community is about, right?
Yeah. And I think the freedom part, again, also just boils down to money again. So I think for you and I, like we had these pretty stable careers and then we just left these careers to do our own thing. Like I don't know about you, but I think for me it was like a much more harder transition, right? Because I didn't do coaching like you did. I started more into like content creation first, like doing YouTube and like all these like little side things. And then it was until I like started accruing a certain like consistent income stream from all these like little side projects, then I was like, okay, I can quit my very stable job in Singapore and like become nomadic. And that was hard. Like I think people on Instagram, they're like, oh yeah, like, just quit your job, your 9 to 5. I'm like, fuck that. Like that was hard. Like I was like slaving away at night and like on weekends, like editing my YouTube videos and trying to get content out. So that transition was a lot harder than I thought it was. But I think again, like that freedom to go out and like go to Taiwan anytime I want, or, travel around the world. Like I love that. I love having these options. So I
Yeah,
agree with
that's one way to do it, and probably the most responsible way is you side hustle until you have enough to support a lifestyle or to show some promise, right? It's
you.
kind of like building a startup of you where you try something
Yeah.
and then if it starts working out, you invest in it more, but you see everything as an experiment before something really picks up and starts working. I think more people should do that. I think too many people, this is just my opinion, and I'll share what I did too, but like I think too many people just think, oh yeah, I'm just gonna quit, and then they quit and they don't really have a plan. But I don't think that's like what our community and Asian Wonder Women do. I feel like Asian women in general are like pulled down by like society and immigrant parents, be like, oh my gosh, you better have like an even better option
Something.
out there. And it
Yeah.
takes like such a big leap forward. For
Mm.
me, I quit thinking that I would go back. Like I quit as in I wanted to find some inspiration out there. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I kind of wanted to go out there and find some inspiration. And I only half believed that I would actually be able to do it. But I knew that I had a fallback if I failed. And if I didn't end up starting a successful startup, didn't find an idea, etc., I could always go back to my Meta offer or, go back to
Mm.
Silicon Valley. I think I had the results and the skills. I was comfortable. I had 3 years of work experience at that time. And I think I wouldn't say that I fully believed in myself, but I knew there was a plan B there and I can kind of ignore that. And that really helped me take the leap too. I think I wouldn't have had maybe as much self-confidence if I was only a year out or like 6 months out of school and don't really have results to show for and being employable again. But I know now, like I work with a bunch of Gen Zs and there's just a lot more opportunity now to be your own kind of creator and do your own things online. But being Asian, I think I always like having a security blanket. And I've also built out that kind of security blanket in terms of financial cushion to
Mhm.
be able to travel and find inspiration. But that also put a lot of pressure on myself in like making it work. And I think that leads into like how we felt like right after. And you spoke with, it was really hard. Like it's hard not having steady income. It's hard to have things be uncertain. And so when I quit, I went to New Zealand, I started driving around in a van, and I thought it was just going to be a bit of time off, a lot of reading, a lot of listening to podcasts, finding inspiration. But really, I look back on my journal entries and I was like anxious the whole time. Like I was 2 weeks into my sabbatical, right? Because I knew I might go back.
Yeah.
And I was like, why haven't I figured out the best idea of what to build next? And my boyfriend and I had so many arguments of like how we can, structure our year to find inspiration. And, I put a lot of pressure on myself to use the time wisely. And I better get more clarity and inspiration than I would if I still lived in San Francisco. Like it was almost like I'm giving me the gift to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Right. It was like out there. So yeah. What about you? You're still going through this. I know that you were like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like every week hop on our calls. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do want to point out too that I think when you were doing your van travels in New Zealand, I didn't know that you had this like internal turmoil. Like I thought you were just like out there living your life, like exploring, traveling. I thought that, you had it all figured out. And so it's kind of like eye-opening or like shocking for me to like hear this now. I also had that same experience, but mine was like a little bit different because I had like a meltdown like in my apartment in Singapore. I was talking to my sister who she has been trained to be a career coach before, but she does like executive coaching from time to time. And so she did it on me as like a coach first, not a sister. And so she asked me like the really hard questions. One of the questions she asked me was like, do you want your manager's job at that fintech company I was at? And I was like, hell no. I was like, I know how stressed out she is and I know how hard it is to like manage all these people. And so I don't know why, it just kind of made me realize like this role I was in, regardless of like the good pay, the benefits, the marquee brand on my LinkedIn, like all of it just didn't matter because I was just like unhappy and I didn't want her role. Like I don't want to go in that direction. So that day I just like sent the email to my manager and I was like, I want to talk to you. And like I resigned like that week. So following that, even up until now, there is still some sort of like anxiety. Like, can I buy a house in the future? Like, where do I go? Like being in Taiwan, I'm like, can I find my life partner in Taiwan or should I go back to Silicon Valley? Like there's so many factors that I'm like thinking about. But ultimately right now, I think the main focus is just like stabilizing my income sources so that I can think about the other things in depth later, if that makes sense.
I'm actually just laughing though. You're like, oh yeah, I don't want my manager's job because she's so stressed managing people. And it's like, if you create your own company, I'm so stressed. I'm managing so many people and so many different projects. I'm like, literally just this weekend, I was complaining to my husband and I was like, I just want to be a business developer again at Wish. I'm like, I just want this one role where I do the same thing every day. I know exactly how to do it. I was very good at it and I had one KPI to drive, right? But then now I'm thinking about like what you said. We have all these decisions in our personal life and in our career, and you just don't know how to make them. And there's no right answer. No one knows the right answer. And everyone expects you to have the right answer now if you're managing people. And like you're a creator, but the top creators, you're going to have a video editing team, you're going to have social media team, you're going to have writers, like you're going to have people that you manage, and they're going to look to you on like, okay, what should I be doing? Like what is the main thing to do? And trust me, it looks a lot like your manager's job. So but at least it's like building something that you want to build and you get to take full control and ownership in its success or failure, versus when I was laid off the first few times, right? When you were quitting and I was just getting laid off, like it wasn't my fault. It was nothing that I can really control. And this is more like about entrepreneurship, but also like giving yourself more choice so that you can take ownership in your choices, no matter whether that's being an entrepreneur, a creator, or going to work for a remote company in order to travel. Like you're being forced to make certain decisions on what to prioritize in your life that you wouldn't get to otherwise if you just always based your entire life off of moving to a place because of a job or staying in a place because of job or doing something because that's just what you do. Like, I think just know that you have so many more options and you can make it work because everyone that's making it work should just inspire you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think to add context about what I was saying about like the manager part, like I think that part was more around I didn't want her role given like the industry and like the context of the hard decisions she had to make bound by someone else's like company constraints. I think being an entrepreneur, like you mentioned, like you're stressed too. Like I think that's the kind of stress that I'm willing to take on, to accept, right? Because I'm like, I have full control of something that I own. And these are like the people I chose to work under me. You know, this is a company that like I chose to build. So it's a different type of stress. But again, I think for me, it's just like, I don't want to be bound by like other people's rules, other people's like timelines, other people's like decisions. Like I want to be able to like be the one making those decisions. But again, I think it's like hard regardless. It's hard being a manager in a different company.
On the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like trying to put together like SOPs right now, like standard practices. And I'm like, why can't someone just tell me the standard practice? Why do I have to do it? And I hate doing it, you know? Yeah. Like I just finally put out like how to communicate well on Slack. Like I'm like, why am I doing this? And, like it's true. Like the CEO should not do this. Like I just don't have an operator right now, but I'm like trying to find one. But I just mean like when you get to set course for the rules at your company and also your life, like what you said, you just have too many options. You're like, do I stay in Taiwan because I can? Or do I go back to SF because I can? Or like, do I go here or keep traveling because I can? No one's there to tell you, like no one knows, only you know. And there's a lot of joy in that freedom, but also a lot of fear and anxiety of like, it's all on you now.
Yeah. I mean, it was like that option of like too much choice is like a bad thing, right? And there are times where I'm like, I wish someone would just tell me what to do. But for now, I'm enjoying it. And I think the boundaries that at least I'm setting for myself are more like, it's like time bound. So I'm like, I can suss out Taiwan for like 3 months and I can always go back. Like, I think I've reinforced the idea that like I can always change things when given the time, but I'll allocate time for myself to like at least try it. But for you, like as an entrepreneur, are you over that fear or like that anxiety? Like what do you have now?
Okay. Yeah. I would say
Yeah.
that I am. And I would say that
Okay.
anxiety was from like when I graduated college and I didn't have a job lined up so that I could go to Silicon Valley and join an early stage startup that didn't hire until immediately, like just in immediate range because they can't predict headcount. That was a lot of anxiety that like summer after college, I was still doing my grad trip with my friends who had lined up offers at like the top consulting and investment banking firms. And I didn't have anything, but I knew that that was what I wanted, but I felt like super anxious like the entire time. And then the same thing happened when I quit my job and I gave myself a year to figure out what I wanted to do. I was anxious that entire time, right? And then now that I've been through a few rounds of like doing hard things, of like pushing myself to go do something I'm afraid of, like moving to Silicon Valley when there's no other examples for it, quitting my job to try to be open to more possibilities, the whole like you can't expect opportunities to come if you don't make room for them, right? So allowing myself to take these risks and seeing time and time again how I've always managed to figure it out, and that if I didn't do that, I would never be where I am today. And every step kind of leads up and all the dots will connect. Looking back, I'm way less anxious now because I know that even if whatever I'm working on right now doesn't work, I can go out and figure out something else that works. And so whatever I ask myself now, it's always, am I doing what I want right now in like different aspects of my life? And I prioritize like exploring the world. I prioritize like being able to build out my own personal brand right now in education. I think eventually maybe I'll move out of education, maybe I won't. I'm pretty passionate about it. I'm like, okay, this is great. And then is like my career, the market opportunity that I'm going for, whether that's for myself or for my company, the best thing that can happen. All you can do is make decisions from the information that you're given right now. And so why put pressure on you in the future? If it doesn't work out and things that I can't control, I'll just do something else like I've always done. And like I'm pretty good at like tossing away failures. Yeah. So has anything helped you with that anxiety now that you're like a few months out?
There are ways, like there's like coping strategies, right? To like keep it at bay. I will say one of the startups I consult for right now, right? Like I'm still considered like a contractor or like a consultant. So to me, that's like a steady stream of income. But again, granted, like if they are like, oh, I don't need a marketing person, they can like axe that budget, etc. But for now, that has been alleviating some of my anxiety around like not having like stable income streams. The other part of me is more of like trying to be more risk tolerant. As I witnessed like through your journey as well, like you've done so many things that are more riskier, but because you've like done it so many times, like it doesn't phase you. Like you've gone through so much, like you know that you'll
Gotta
make it
train
out.
yourself.
Yeah, it's basically
Yeah.
training. It's like training for a freaking marathon that never ends. But I think for me, in the same vein, it's like I'm just keeping those thoughts at bay. Like I have a lot of thoughts that are like, should we just go back to a 9 to 5? Like it doesn't matter. Like, you know, just go back, just go back. Like it's constantly like every day I'm battling these thoughts. And so what I've done is like, like I keep track of like what I'm doing, like how much money I'm making, and like just like positive things, like these like affirmations, which is very like hoo hoo ha ha, but it helps. It actually really helps. And then just surrounding myself with people who have done it before or are supportive. Because if I'm surrounding myself with all these like 9 to 5ers, I'm just going to want to naturally go back to it, right? Because that's all we talk about, like a 401k and like steady income. But if I talk to like creators and entrepreneurs and people who are like hustling and like throwing their weight too, like I will just be just as inspired. And so that's what I've been doing more with like Asian Wonder Woman, like surrounding myself with these women.
Yeah. The community is full of people that are doing completely different things than I would expect. And they have the option to do others. I think it's just giving yourself optionality as that almost like backup plan and financial cushion that I was like, you already have it. You worked somewhere for like 3-4 years. Like we have an amazing woman in our community, Bonnie, and she was a Google engineer for I think like 7-8 years. And then she finally made the leap to become a full-time artist. Now she's like living her life in Bali, and she sold her first paintings within the first like 6 months of her starting her business. Like it's definitely not enough at all to replace her Google income. But at some point you choose like, how do you want to live your life? And she could always go back. Her skills will be in demand. Like the skills that you build as you try to figure it out for yourself should make you way more employable and valuable to someone, because it shows you're a self-starter, you're a problem solver, you actually have real results for your own startup or like your own little business, whatever keeps you alive financially. Yeah, it helps. And Emily, like you mentioned, you know, you're nervous that someone might cut the rope for you, like if they don't need this position. I mean, I feel the same way from like my biggest investor and stuff like that too. But look at all these layoffs. They can cut the rope anyway, right? You might as well be trying to do what you enjoy doing. My husband and I talk about this a lot of like, how do you prioritize what you want to do? And like when he was finding a job, he specifically was like, I will only take remote positions, like fully remote anywhere in the world, not remote in North America, because we just prioritize that area in our lives the most to have that freedom to be able to live the way that we want to live. And if one day like my current job or like the startup that I'm running with like the investor who's based in Austin, like if I can no longer live anywhere in the world, I would like forego my like super incredible pay and then just go do something by myself that like supports that life.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's, again, just knowing and having faith in yourself that you'll make it out regardless. So it's a work in progress. Like, I think people just don't really talk about these like hardships. They talk about like how they've made it successfully and like how they made it out on top. But like, these are like the hard parts that people don't talk about. But I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah. Like sometimes I wish, I always say like, I wish I was almost less ambitious sometimes. I'm just so tired of being ambitious. I'm like, oh man, like what if I could just like go and be a front desk admin person?
I was literally thinking that the other day. I was like, what if I just or what if I just did boba? Like I just worked in a boba
I mean, you're in Taiwan, I'm in Japan. Like I see all these people like being pretty happy, right? And it's like this world is up to you. You can make these choices. No, you have these choices. So let's wrap up though. And as the last question, I actually, you know what I would love to hear? I would love to hear what are the 3 affirmations you told yourself today to keep going? And I'll share mine too.
Okay. So generally it goes like, if I've gotten through blank, 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 which I like name all the hardships I've gone through the past years. If I've gone through it and I'm still alive and I like am still here, then I can do blank, 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 blank in the future. So it's just kind of like reiterating like what I've done in the past and like that I can do it in the future. And then I think the second is like,
wait, hold on. Tell me the one that you said this morning to yourself or last night or whatever.
Oh, I don't think I said anything this morning. But I think generally like if I look at myself in the mirror, I would say like,
do it now.
I would say look at all the people living their lives like day to day, unafraid to make the hard decisions that they should make to make a life for themselves, and look at the decisions that you've made to get to where you are today. If you are like fearless and you're confident in yourself, then you will make it very far regardless. Or like there's no option to fail. I think I would say something around those lines. What about you?
Cool. Wait, you didn't finish the second one. You said there's a second affirmation type?
Oh, it's probably like I'm a bad bitch.
You know, the TikTok thing of like, I am wealthy, I am healthy. Yeah. No, seriously,
Yeah.
that's like definitely an anthem. So I'm looking down because I'm on my phone. So how I do
Yeah.
affirmations
Yeah.
is I actually recorded, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
share all of it because it would just like be super long. I call them lofty questions because I
Mhm.
heard from somewhere that your brain registers like questions that you ask it as affirmations better
Mhm.
because then your subconscious is forever trying to answer like
Mm.
why it is that you are this way.
I think while we're waiting for you to find it too, I think one of the things I read online too was a good question. Like most of the time we ask ourselves like, oh, what if it doesn't work? Right? Like, oh, all of these
Mm.
bad things will happen if it doesn't work out. Like I won't have income, I won't have stability, like I won't be able to like put food on the table. But then I think the prompt was like, what if we ask ourselves like, what if it did work? And like we rewire our thinking and our mentality around the situation. So I think that's also what I've been doing too, like rewiring it to be a positive outcome rather than like thinking of like the worst outcome. Did you find your recording?
I'm not gonna play it, but like, yeah. So what I would ask is like, why is my team so amazing at what they do? So it's like, how do I empower my team, right? Like, why am I such a great leader that my whole team
Mhm.
looks up to me? And then there's like other stuff, like, why am I such a sensual, sexy, hot woman?
I love it.
you know?
Yeah.
Why am I always surrounded by love and amazing relationships with friends and amazing people? Why do I have so much fun every day? Why is my company growing rapidly every year? And I solve any problem that comes my way in a fun and easy way. Why do I live in the most luxurious of homes, hotels, and first class cabins? So, like, stuff
Mm.
like that. Like, it's almost like a form of manifestation. I have 36, I think, of
Yeah.
these things that are in my career, in my like relationships, in my financial life, or etc. And then they're part affirmation, part manifestations. And when I want to change something, I just re-record the whole thing. And so I write about things I'm grateful for every morning. And then I like list all these things of like, why am I this already? So it kind of like helps me embody this
Yeah.
already. Yeah. I hope
I love
that
that.
helped everyone, and like, everyone listening can get a better glimpse into our minds on like how difficult
Mhm.
it is, because like no one really shares the hard parts, but we're all anxious every day and we're all like, are we doing the right thing? But I think no matter what you're doing, you're always going to be asking yourself if you're doing the right thing. And so you might as well do whatever it is that you want. Well, thanks for listening, and see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.
I'm the baddest chick, I'm not a thick. I'm about my business, chow money clip. Sushi got it, make that money quick. Now